Jump straight into it, guys. We got a lot to cover. And we're going to start off kind of lighthearted, okay? I don't know if anybody heard, Donald Trump's been obsessed with Canada, with Greenland, with Mexico, Panama Canal, and Gaza. Next, it's going to be... So, Trump has now been given the power. Now, granted, it's not been passed or anything like that, but they want to name it Red, White, and Blue Land. Representative Earl Carter introduced this legislation authorizing President Trump to acquire Greenland and renaming it Red, White, and Blue Land. I have no idea how we got to this place. There is just I have no idea. This is such a weird thing. And we don't have rising costs at the food store, right? We don't have that to worry about, right? No, we do. And this is what they're concerned about, is renaming Greenland. Even though Greenland said, we don't want you. Greenland said, we do not want you. Please do not come here. Okay? I'm peeking really bad. I'm going to go ahead and lower this a little bit for you guys. So, now we're going to get on to some foreign affairs. Okay? Donald Trump. Okay? Let's just put it this way. Donald Trump is not really... Let me read this. I got to prepare. I've been working with Tron to try to make sure my intros are a little bit more, how do you word it, punchy. Okay? Donald Trump's foreign policy is an absolute disaster. That's exactly how I do it, actually, on TikTok. Hold on. Got to make a few adjustments here. My audio is still peaking really badly. Okay. One more time for the fellas in the back. Donald Trump's foreign policy is a disaster, okay? So, right now we have Pete Hegseth. For anyone who's unaware, Donald Trump has been trying to negotiate a Ukraine peace deal that he said he would have done so easily on day one. On day one, Donald Trump said, I would have the Ukraine-Russian conflict handled. That's what they said. Pete Hegseth is leading some of these efforts and said we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective. The U.S. does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement. What he's saying here is that we should give some of the land that Russia has acquired to Russia. That really works in Ukraine's favor. So what this shows is that Russia can go in, invade another country, and they will get the benefit of the doubt. That's great, right? It's just so great that this is what's going on right now. And then we have Trump saying, a reporter asked Trump, do you want to add Russia back to the G7? In which case Trump said, I'd love to have them back. I think Putin would love to be back. But wait, there's more. Trump says that he trusts Putin and refuses to criticize him in any way, shape, or form, but absurdly blames Biden for Putin's invasion for Ukraine. Let's listen to it for context. Let's go ahead and listen to this clip real quick.
Says that he really wants peace.
It's a little low. Let me try to turn that up a little bit here. Might be a little loud on y'all's end.
Do you believe him?
Yeah, I do. I believe he wants peace. I believe that President Putin, when I spoke to him yesterday, I mean, I know him very well. Yeah, I think he wants peace. I think he would tell me if he didn't. I'd like to see peace.
Do you trust President Putin?
I believe that, I believe that he would like to see something happen. I trust him on this subject. I think he'd like to see something happen. I think it could have happened a long time ago. I think Biden, number one, it shouldn't have started, but it did. And now all those cities are knocked down like demolition sites. All those beautiful golden towers are knocked down. There's nothing going to replace them. But much more importantly,
I don't know what golden towers he's referring to.
You lost millions of people, a lot of soldiers, but you lost millions of people. When they knocked down those cities and they're all laying down on the side, they're lying down just...
Why are they lying down, Trump? Could someone enlighten me why they're lying down? Could it be because that Putin invaded Ukraine? Could it be that's the case? And we also had Trump today. Let me go ahead and clear out some of these. Reporter, this was just a few moments ago. Reporter asked, today you talked about having 3 ways to talk to with Z and Putin. What do you say to European leaders who say you're more keen to speak to America's adversaries than allies? Trump said, we told the European Union and NATO people you have to pay more money because it's unfair what you're doing. At the same time, we have a very good conversation with Putin. So, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. All right, so I just think it's crazy to me to see how Donald Trump is so in favor of Putin. Where's Zelensky in all these talks? By the way, zero mention of Zelensky in any of these conversations, by the way. It's all about meeting Putin. It's all about going to Russia and things of that. And then, of course, we have, let me go ahead and get rid of this. Oops, undid that one. That's okay. We then have Donald Trump going in. Trump said he already talked to Zelensky. I think that was, yesterday? Glaring Husky? I think it was in passing, right? He mentioned he may have talked to Zelensky. That's great. All I've heard from Donald Trump for the past 2 days, I've heard 99% Putin, 1% Zelensky. I have not heard nothing about that. And then what we have seen is that Trump has now imposed, I believe this was today, Donald Trump ended up imposing tariffs, reciprocal tariffs. Basically what that means is that when countries impose a tariff on us for 50%, we then impose a 50% tariff back on them. Remember that, okay? Here's the Putin stuff. I organized these a little bit worse. And keep in mind, Donald Trump had already ran on the fact that he was going to lower the price of goods, but he has not done so, okay? He's not done so. And that's the crazy thing about this is Donald Trump now, here's Donald Trump on tariffs. There could be some short-term disturbance. Let's take a quick listen to this. Take a listen to what
they'll do it without tariffs, and therefore prices won't go up. There could be some short-term disturbance, but long-term
prices won't go up. There'll just be some short-term disturbance, aka inflation. Okay, that's what that is. Okay, no, Mojo, stop, Mojo, you're good. Oh, Miss Mandy, you're in YouTube. I'm tripping. I saw Mojo in Twitter and in Twitch, and got it mixed up. That's what it was. I'm sitting there watching Mojo. By the way, Mojo's not a troll, guys. Mojo is somebody on TikTok. He's our TikTok friend, okay? If any of my mods are in there watching Mojo, okay, he's a good guy. He's messing with me. So anyways, let's go back and listen to this again.
They'll do it without tariffs, and therefore prices won't go up. There could be some short-term disturbance, but long-term, it's gonna make our country a fortune.
So Americans.
It's gonna make our country a fortune long-term. How? When there's not gonna be a fortune left. Americans are gonna lose every single penny they have.
Should prepare for some short-term pain.
No, you said that. I didn't say that. You know?
Wait, what was that? Hold on.
So Americans should prepare for some short-term pain.
No, you said that. I didn't say that.
Guys, 14 seconds. 14 seconds. And listen to what just was said. Donald Trump, right here. Let's go back.
They'll do it without tariffs, and therefore prices won't go up. There could be some short-term disturbance.
Short-term disturbances of Donald Trump's own mouth. This was at 5 seconds into the video. 5 seconds, okay?
But long-term, it's gonna make our country a fortune.
So Americans should prepare for some short-term pain.
No, you said that. I didn't say.
She said short-term pain. It's the same thing as short-term disturbance. And he goes, you said that. I did it. Literally, what is this? 14 seconds? 10 seconds ago. 10 seconds. You just said that.
That, you know?
Well, if the prices go up.
Let's see what happens. Nobody really knows what is going to happen.
We know what's going to happen. Tariffs by nature increase prices. This is insane. And don't forget, here's Donald Trump. So anybody who's unaware of what any kind of words were said by Donald Trump, don't get it twisted. This was Donald Trump's own words, his own promise. Let's make it to the big screen.
Starting on day one of the Trump administration, we will end inflation and we will make America great again. We will deliver regulation cuts, energy price cuts, interest rate cuts, and we will...
Keep in mind, interest rate cuts are something that he can't do, okay? Interest rate cuts are something that the Fed can do.
Drive prices down, and we'll drive them down very fast. Starting on day one of the Trump administration, we will end inflation and we will...
End inflation. Guys, by the way, we're on day number... Close to day number 30.
You can't handle the truth.
Yo, Vijay... Yo, thank you for the subscription. I appreciate it. Appreciate the subscription. Got me. I don't know if that was meant to be or if I was just saying that wrong. But I appreciate the subscription, buddy. So yeah, we got Trump sitting here saying we will drive down prices on day one. And he's talking about tariffs. Okay? Talking about tariffs. Tariffs are going to increase the price. That's just how this works. And then we have this. We're going to start... let me see here. I think we're about to start talking about... Yeah, okay. Here we go. Now, let's talk about Elon Musk and Doge. Okay? Elon Musk and Doge have a fun little experiment going on right now where they're the unelected bureaucrat going through our government right now trying to find some of this thing. Let's talk about this, why don't we, okay? Let's talk about this. So, here it is here. FEMA fires employees over $59 million migrant hotel payout. 4 FEMA employees are being fired for approving a $59 million payment to house migrants in New York City without authorization, according to DHS.
You can't handle the truth.
The spending, calling it egregious and vowing a clawback demand to recover the funds. Here's the thing, guys. Let's not forget that the Trump administration tried to divert FEMA funds for a migrant detention center and border enforcement. So when they're getting upset about how, you know, the Biden administration moved funds when they actually didn't really move funds, it was appropriated by Congress. Donald Trump did the exact same thing. Right here, it's a point in case where he tried, and he actually did try to literally move funds. Whereas Joe Biden was only using the funds as it was intended to be used. Donald Trump actually tried to divert funds. So it's dramatically different there. Furthermore, we, you know, on kind of the topic of what we were talking about with our foreign policy, I don't know if you see that guy in the background there. That's our buddy Elon Musk. Sitting down with the, I think, Prime Minister, what is it? Prime Minister or whatever, Modi? With Modi. Okay, President of India. I don't know what they use over there. Elon Musk is sitting down with another foreign leader. All I have heard from MAGA and from Republicans is about unelected bureaucrats. That is all that I have heard over the past 4 years. And my issue is that, what is this? And Donald Trump was asked about this, why he met with, why Elon Musk met with Modi. Let's go ahead and take a listen, why don't we?
Musk met with Prime Minister Modi earlier today. Did he do so as an American CEO or did he do so as a representative of the U.S. government?
Are you talking about me?
No, Elon Musk.
Elon, I don't know. They met, and I assume he wants to do business in India. But India is a very hard place to do business in because of the tariffs. They have the highest tariffs just about in the world, and it's a hard place to do business. No, I would imagine he met possibly because, you know, he's running a company. He's doing this as something that he's felt strongly about for a long time because he sees.
So Elon Musk is sitting down with President Modi, or Prime Minister, I'm not sure how they call it. And Donald Trump is saying that this is due to business, which is kind of crazy to me because in a way, how can Elon Musk be sitting down with Modi for business, but yet him doing Doge has nothing to do with his business? Now, we'll get into Doge. In fact, we're going to do that right now. And we are going to go through and look at this. Okay, we are going to see just what is going on behind the curtain of Doge. So the Department of Government Efficiency as a Twitter. Let's take a look at what they're doing. And this is where we have a problem. Okay. So let's just take a look. Let's go down this lane and see exactly what it is that Doge is doing. So this was posted 57 minutes ago. The Department of Education terminated grants to the 4 equity assistance centers totaling $33 million. One provided professional learning around critical race theory and racial literacy. And they provided a video below. This is good evidence. But even then, I have a problem because you're still not providing me with enough evidence. And so this is an issue I have. Okay? We need evidence. If you are going to do an audit, anybody who works in finance or accounting knows that in order to do, when you do something like this, when you do an audit, you should do your findings. And then when you find your findings, you present those findings. You should also be trying, if you're going to claim that there's some kind of waste and fraud or any of those natures, you really need to provide evidence. And you would need to conduct a forensic audit. But that's not what's being done here. What's being done here is they're hitting Control F, looking for keywords like DEI, inclusion, equity, maybe other keywords. And they're putting these out there in the ether. They're putting it out there. They're canceling these contracts that we don't even know what these contracts are. I've had people send me certain things about basket weaving in Afghanistan, for example. And it turns out it's more than just that. It's actually providing humanitarian assistance, health, things like that. We saw Sesame Street in Iraq, right? Well, the Sesame Street thing was actually for potentially military families. It was actually a Sim Poor program. You have to dive into these things. And so right now what we have is we have Doge being the arbiter of, these things. They are there being the middleman. But we can go down here. Here we go. This is a great one, guys. This is great. This is what I'm talking about. EPA also canceled 3 DEI contracts, saving American taxpayers $45 million. And this is their evidence. This is their whopping evidence. I know it's hard for you guys to see. Let me see if I can zoom in. Okay, I could probably open this up in another tab. Let's open this up in another tab. Okay, look at what this says. Okay, this is their evidence. This tells me nothing. This tells me nothing. This doesn't tell me other than who with the transaction, and the amount, and that they terminated it for convenience. Okay, I don't know what this contract was for. I have no idea. And yet they're canceling $45 million worth of contracts because of DEI. What is this? Now, they claim they're going to post something on their website. Let me go ahead and pull that up real quick for you guys so you guys can see this website. It's finally working. Just keep it over here. It's finally working, but this is the front page. All I did was type in doge.gov, and this is the beginning website. Right now, they don't have anything saving. They don't have anything for the savings. Remember, transparency, though, guys. Transparency. If you go to regulations, this is really interesting. You can go through all these different ones. I don't know how they're getting these sections because, for example, if I go sort by regulations, you'll see it says 21,000 sections of regulation. But if you go to the Department of Agriculture and you go to the FREC or something along those lines, there's only about 5,000 sections. Now, 5,000 is still a lot, okay? But it's not 21,000. And so I don't know where they're, and again, words are words. I get what they're trying to do is they're trying to do that meme of like, here's how much regulations in place as if those regulations are somehow inherently bad. But we don't even know what those regulations are. And in fact, there's no way to drill down on this data. There's no way to drill down on this data other than going down to this very, 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 very bottom source right here. Now, you might be wondering, what do these links go to? Well, that's great you asked. The Unconstitutionality Index goes to a Forbes article. I'm not going to click on it because I think there might be some ads that might reveal some personal information. But anyways, that's part of it. So when we talk about getting into Doge and what they're finding, we need more information on this. This isn't efficient. And keep in mind, Marjorie Taylor Greene has already mentioned, and they've already done this, and we'll watch a video here in a second. They want to now, this Doge committee, the Department of Government Efficiency Committee has met. Keep in mind, guys, we'll eventually get, listen, guys, listen. If, I know y'all are wondering about inflation. I know y'all are wondering about how that's going to work. And how, you know, we're going to get to that, guys. Don't worry. We're going to get to it. It might be in 4 years, but we're going to get to it. But they're spending this time, instead of researching how they can bring down inflation, they're spending this on trying to find the government waste. And it produced some pretty interesting sound bites. Let's take a listen to this one. By the way, I have a hot take, okay? If anybody thinks that, I think that the next presidential candidate for the Democrats needs to be AOC as the presidential candidate, and Jasmine Crockett as the, this is kind of a not a meme. I mean, I think it would be great, but I don't know if AOC would be good enough to win, but hey, I think it'd be pretty interesting to watch. AOC as presidential candidate, Jasmine Crockett for VP. I think that'd be awesome. All right. So let's go ahead and watch this Marjorie Taylor Greene back and forth with Jasmine Crockett. It's great.
Trying to conduct audits and figure out where the waste, fraud, and abuse is. I don't know why you would go to some tech guy. In fact, it was only techies that were sitting there at inauguration. We didn't have auditors. I would welcome auditors to come in and do forensic audits. In fact, he sat there in the Oval Office yesterday and he admitted that he was lying, and he was using his propaganda machine to do it when he said that we sent millions of dollars to Gaza for condoms. That was a lie. So let me tell you something.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
It's time for
the
us
gentlelady's
to do our
time has
jobs
expired.
and rein in this rogue actor known
The gentlelady's
as
time has expired. I now recognize the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Burleson.
So they go back and forth on it. Marjorie Taylor Greene being the chairwoman. Now, Miss Mandy, I know you asked me about AOC. Again, it's more of a joke, but would it be awesome to see AOC and Jasmine Crockett on the ticket? It would be awesome. It'd be kind of cool. Do I think that those are going to be the most plausible and the most the best candidates in 2028? Probably not. The best candidate, if I had to pick one, would probably be Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris. And I know that's a very hot take to take, is Kamala Harris, but right now her polling is in the lead for 2028. I think so. So Jasmine Crockett has had a lot of different videos that I can go back to. She's got that tenacity, and I think it's really great. And I think that's something that I think is going to carry her really well in the future. Inflation is due to government overspending by cutting down waste, by auditing, by going through and finding the money that's being wasted to cut back on overspending. The result will be decreased. Then, well, the problem with this is, Zandy, is that we're looking at a problem where Donald Trump is trying to find this wasteful spending, okay? But it doesn't really help the economy, so to speak, okay? And the other issue is that we have to worry about the fact that Donald Trump is going to try to implement tax cuts, which then is going to, any kind of savings that are going to be generated from this could very well be lost in the way that he does these tax cuts. So it has to be done in a very particular manner. And look, if it reduces inflation, great. But none of these policies that I see so far would actually do so. In fact, what it's doing is it's potentially laying off people from their jobs. You can't
handle the truth.
And those people being laid off from their jobs is only going to make inflation and the economy worse. So then we go from there, and we have this one. So I got to make sure I'm better on my timing on this. We're going to get better, guys. I promise we're going to get better. So now we have the rogue judges. So Donald Trump does not like the fact, some of his followers do not like the fact that these judges are ruling against Donald Trump. And as such, we're seeing things like this, where Arizona Congressman Eli Crane just announced intentions to draft articles of impeachment against U.S. District Judge Paul Engelmeyer after Judge Engelmeyer issued a temporary order restricting access to sensitive Treasury Department payment systems by political appointees, including those from Doge, citing concerns over potential unauthorized disclosure of personal data and cybersecurity risks. We've seen this happening time and time and time again, where judges are ruling against, Trump's orders. And the issue with this is they are trying to undermine the judicial branch. If you do not like the ruling that took place at that court, you have the right to appeal it. You have the right to go in, appeal the decision, and hopefully an appellate court will take up your case. This is kind of an outside their theory, but my theory about what might be going on is they're flooding the courts with these different constitutional questions, if you will. We see this going on right now with birthright citizenship. We're seeing this going on right now with this Doge stuff going on. We see this with the employee hiring freeze. We see this with some of the things he's doing with these websites. I don't think I've ever seen this many lawsuits, and it gets tangled up in the weeds because you're sitting there trying to parse through this and go, what's going on? And I think this is done intentionally. I don't know, if it was, but it feels as if it is, just by the sheer number of these questions being brought in front of the court. And a reporter asked Pete Hegseth, our anchor at the Department of Defense, our Secretary of Defense, saying, are there any limits or supervisions you'd want to place on Elon Musk's team given his conflict of interest? This has been a big issue. Keep in mind, Elon Musk is receiving tons of money, or let me be correct, SpaceX is receiving a ton of money from the federal government. And I've looked into this. If I'm to be fair in this argument, it certainly looks like SpaceX is a little bit more efficient than NASA. I'll give that. However, though, it is still a huge conflict of interest, and what I would like to see is some kind of divestiture from SpaceX during the time of this audit. Or I would like for this to be headed or spearheaded by a committee in Congress, and it could be the Department of Government Efficiency. And Elon Musk can certainly sit on that board, but I would like to see the forensic auditors in there, not tech bros. Right now, who's going through all this stuff right now, by the way, guys? Software engineers. There are CEOs out there, but those CEOs are not CFOs. You can be a CEO of a company and not have any financial background. It behooves you to have that, especially if you're a publicly traded company. And if you're a publicly traded company, you might have a bunch of other, credentials. But right now, what we have going through these things is we have a tech bro, or a broligarchy, where they're going through and they're just searching these key terms. And all Hegseth had to say was, well, I've been in touch with Elon Musk. What a great patriot. He said a little. Let's watch the full thing, to be fair to Pete Hegseth here.
Elon Musk and Doge into the Pentagon potentially in the next few weeks. Do you expect him to start unilaterally cutting programs and contracts the way he's done at USAID and other agencies? And are there any limits or supervision you'd want to place on his team?
And keep in mind that USAID is in fact an independent federal agency. What that means is that Donald Trump cannot just go in and start, messing with the department or the USAID. It became an independent federal agency in the 90s. In the 60s or 70s, it was put in place via an executive order, but Congress put it out in front of Congress around the 90s, and they ended up deciding that it would become an independent federal agency.
Given his conflict of interest with China.
Well, we've been in touch with. I've been in touch with Elon Musk, who's a great patriot, interested in advancing the America First agenda, knows that President Trump got 77 million votes and a mandate from the American people, and part of that is bringing actual business-like efficiency to government, hence what Doge is doing. We've been talking to them in partnership with them, and as I said on social media, we welcome Doge to the Pentagon, and I hope to welcome Elon to the Pentagon very soon, and his team, working in collaboration with us. There are waste, redundancies, and head counts in headquarters that need to be addressed. There's just no doubt. Look at a lot of the climate programs that have been pursued at the Defense Department. The Defense Department is not in the business of climate change, solving the global thermostat. We're in the business of deterring and winning wars. So things like that we want to look for to find efficiencies, and many others, the way we acquire weapon system, procurement. There's plenty of places where we want the keen eye of Doge, but we'll do it in coordination. We're not going to do things that are to the detriment of American operational or tactical capabilities. President Trump is committed to delivering the best possible military. The Defense Department is not USAID. USAID's got a lot of problems that I talked about with the troops pursuing globalist agendas that don't have a connection to America first.
Thank you, Miss April. Appreciate all you guys. I got a little mute button. Appreciate it. Anyways, when it comes to this idea, look, I love our troops. I understand that Pete Hegseth, at the end of the day, is the Secretary of Defense. I just think it's really wild to me how he brings up this globalist agenda thing, right? The idea that there is a globalist agenda and, it's not America first. But then why is Donald Trump going on and talking about Russia and Ukraine and not even really Ukraine, talking with India and China and things like that? What's America first? Why is he over there talking about acquiring Greenland, acquiring Canada, which I believe we'll get to that later, where he talks about wanting to acquire Canada as the 51st state? Doesn't seem like the president's agenda is America first. And now we get to the tippy top. We're going to react to this. This was pretty viral. This is a meeting that they had. This is pretty lengthy, so we're going to try to speed this up a little bit. I'm going to play this. Let's do 1.25. Let's go ahead and watch this. This is Donald Trump and Elon Musk in the Oval Office and taking questions. So let's go ahead and take a listen to this. Let's react to this. Why don't we?
We've had a great discussion, terrific discussion concerning Gaza and everything else. We had discussions also about Saturday at 12 o'clock. It's going to be a big moment. We'll see what happens. I don't expect much happening with these people, but we'll see what happens. And we're going to be signing a very important deal today. It's Doge, and I'm going to ask Elon to tell you a little bit about it and some of the things that we found, which are shocking. Billions and billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse.
I don't know if we're up to billions of dollars, to be clear. It might be maybe a few hundred million. I don't know if we're up to billions. And to be clear, Elon Musk has billions that he's received from the federal government.
And I think it's very important. And that's one of the reasons I got elected. I said, we're going to do that. Nobody had any idea it was that bad, that sick, and that corrupt. And it seems hard to believe that judges want to try and stop us from looking for corruption, especially when we found hundreds of millions of dollars worth, much more than that, in just a short period of time. We want to weed out the corruption. And it seems hard to believe that a judge could say, we don't want you to do that. Well, so maybe we have to look at the judges, because that's a very serious, I think it's a very serious.
There's Donald Trump saying we should look at the judges. Once again, undermining our judicial branch.
Violation. I'll ask Elon Musk to say a few words, and we'll take some questions. Elon, go ahead.
Sure. So at a high level, if you say what is the goal of Doge, and I think a significant part of the presidency is to restore democracy. This may seem like, well, are we in a democracy? Well, if you don't have a feedback loop, we'd have to. If you sorry. I tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes. If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy.
Then I would say that we live in a bureaucracy right now. Who is Elon Musk? He's not voted in, and he's making these decisions to make cuts. Not Donald Trump. Elon Musk is making these decisions to cut these contracts. He was not voted in by anybody. So by his own logic, we are now living in a bureaucracy.
So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the President, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large unelected bureaucracy. This is not to say that there are good people who are in the federal bureaucracy, but you can't have an autonomous federal bureaucracy. You have to have one that is responsive to the people.
Yes, I'm aware that Doge was created by Obama. It was actually created as like the Department of Digital Services, which has nothing to do with what Doge is doing. So
that's the whole point of a democracy. And if you looked at this, if you looked at the founders today and said, what do you think of the way things have turned out? Well, we have this unelected, fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative. And this is not something that people want, and it does not match the will of the people. So it's just something we've got to fix. And we've also got to address the deficit. So we've got a $2 trillion deficit, and if we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt. I mean, it's really astounding that.
Keep in mind that this man right here increased our deficit over the next 10 years significantly more than Joe Biden. Republicans, time and time again, are the ones that increase our deficit, and Democrats are left to clean it up. And for anybody who's saying that the deficit increased larger under Joe Biden, take a look at that again, because looking at how much our debt went up under one president is a little bit faulty. Why? Because when a president signs something into law, there are effects well long beyond that administration, right? So when Joe Biden was going through some of this inflationary things, that was in part due to Donald Trump's policies. Likewise, when Donald Trump inherited the nice economy or economic recovery from Obama, he inherited that. And to be clear, Donald Trump right now is inheriting some of Joe Biden's policies. But, and I say but because it's very important, some things can absolutely upend that momentum. For example, inflation was down to 2.5%. It has gone up to about 3% now since November. It's gone up to 3% since November, month over month. Okay, inflation is compounding. It continuously goes up. But last month, it was found that it went up to 3%. So if Donald Trump were to say implement tariffs, those would absolutely cause inflation. And that would then stymie any kind of momentum that may have been had by the Joe Biden economy. So there are certain things you can do as a president that can absolutely overwrite any of the good that the previous administration may have had going.
The interest payments alone on the national debt exceed the Defense Department budget, which is shocking because we spend a lot of money on defense. But if that just keeps going, we're essentially going to bankrupt the country. So what I really want to say is, like, it's not optional for us to reduce the federal expenses. It's essential. It's essential for America to remain solvent as a country, and it's essential for America to have the resources necessary to provide things to its citizens and not simply be servicing vast amounts of debt.
And also, could you mention some of the things that your team has found, some of the crazy numbers, including the woman that walked away with about $30 million?
Right.
Et
well, we do find it sort of rather odd that there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position,
which is interesting because Elon Musk saw a significant increase in wealth right after the election. And I guarantee you it's gone up since then. So when people talk about Elon Musk not taking a salary, keep in mind he still owns stock in SpaceX, in Tesla. So when he's sitting here auditing all these companies and he's sitting here saying that somehow they've made $30 million, sure, probably not the greatest thing, but you're not innocent either.
What happened to USAID. We're just curious as to where it came from. Maybe they're very good at investing, in which case we should take their investment advice, perhaps. But there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why. Where does it come from? And I think the reality is that they're getting wealthy at the taxpayer expense. That's the honest truth of it. So, we're looking at,
Now, keep in mind, he said, the thing that's interesting about this is he said they're getting wealthy at the taxpayer's expense. but their net worth went up. That could be stock options. That could be a whole number of things. It doesn't inherently mean that it went up because of the taxpayer. We saw this, for example, I don't know if this is who they're referring to, but Chelsea Clinton. We saw this with the Clinton Foundation, where the Clinton Foundation had like obligations and things like that, and they only received like $17,000 from the taxpayer, like from the taxpayer.
Well, just if you look at say Treasury, for example, basic controls that should be in place, that are in place in any company, such as making sure that any given payment has a payment categorization code, that there is a comment field that describes the payment, and that if a payment is on the do not pay list, that you don't actually pay it. None of those things are true currently. So the reason that...
Where's the proof? Here's the problem is he's going to the media right now, and none of us have a way to fact check this information. None of us. Nobody, other than him and this circle. That's a problem.
Departments can't pass audits is because the payments don't have a categorization code. It's like just a...
John Levine said it's called stocks. His assets in his company went up, and no, Chelsea got $80+ million from USAID. The problem is that Chelsea Clinton did not get $80+ million. It was the Clinton Foundation that received $80+ million, and that was that was actually the contributions from all sources. The actual taxpayer, and I can pull this up. Let me actually pull this up real quick to debunk this. And I'm only going to pull up the screenshot. That's why I'm looking on Twitter right now. Let me see. Chelsea Clinton, 80 million. This is an easy debunkable one, but I feel like it is important for me to mention this to you guys. Here we go. This is a good picture.
You can't handle the truth.
Of course, if it'll load. Maybe it'll load. No, you can't really see it. Okay, maybe it won't load. Let's go to right here. All right. So what you see is gross receipts. This is why having a basic understanding of accounting is really great when reading this stuff. And there is a nonprofit accounting that you have to understand. But I'm not going to bore you with the details. Gross receipts just means what that particular foundation received from everybody. Contributions from other companies, from private donors, everybody. $83 million. Contributions is a little bit different. I'd have to look at that again because I forgot what that one is. That one's not necessarily from the taxpayer. Grants given is obviously grants given from the government. But again, this is going to the Clinton Foundation is essentially what this is. That's why it says Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton. The taxpayer funds is $17,000. So taxpayers only put $17,000 towards the Clinton Foundation. If you want to make a big stink about it, by all means, go right ahead. That's fine. You want to find the little tiny $17,000 payment that went to the Clinton Foundation that Chelsea Clinton may have only seen $100 from, if that. She might have received far less than that. Be my guest.
Massive number of blank checks just flying out the building. So you can't reconcile blank checks. You've got comment fields that are also blank, so you don't know why the payment was made. And then we've got this truly absurd, a do not pay list, which can take up to a year for an organization to get on a do not pay list. And this, we're talking about terrorist organizations, we're talking about known fraudsters, known aspects of waste, known things that do not match any congressional appropriation. It can take up to a year to get on the list, and even once on the list is not used. It's mind-blowing. So what we're talking about here...
Which again, I would need evidence to this. When you have a forensic audit, you should be able to provide the evidence. Don't just tell me, show me.
We're really just talking about adding common sense controls that should be present, that haven't been present. So you say, like, well, how could such a thing arise? That seems crazy. When you understand that really everything is geared towards complaint minimization, so then you understand the motivations. So if people receive money, they don't complain, obviously. But if people don't receive money, they do complain. And the fraudsters complain the loudest and the fastest. So then when you understand that, then it makes sense. Oh, that's why everything just, they approve all the payments at Treasury. Because if you approve all the payments, you don't get complaints. But now we're saying that, no, actually.
And again, I would need evidence that they're approving, quote unquote, all payments. Now, by all, I'm assuming he's referring to anything that comes across the desk, even if it's on the do not pay list, which is odd because I've worked with these ERP systems. If they're on a do not pay list, you literally cannot pay them through a system. So I'm automatically having some red flags going on over here.
we are going to complain. If money is spent badly, if your taxpayer dollars are not spent in a sensible and frugal manner, then that's not okay. Your tax dollars need to be spent wisely on things that matter to the people.
And again, who is assigning these things? Congress.
I mean, these things, like, it's just common sense. It's not draconian or radical. I think it's really just saying, let's look at each of these expenditures and say, is this actually in the best interest of the people? And if it is, it's approved. If it's not, we should think about it. So, there's crazy things like just cursory examination of Social Security, and we've got people in there that are 150 years old. Now, do you know anyone who's 150? I don't know.
Evidence. See these wildish claims, and there's zero facts being. This is the problem when you have kind of these people in office that are just kind of flying by the seam of their pants. They're not providing anything here. He should have like a piece of paper and hold up and say, see, this person, mark out the details, is 150 years old. Provide that.
Okay. They should be on the Guinness Book of World Records. They're missing out. So, that's a case where, like, I think they're probably dead. It's my guess. Or they should be very famous.
You can't handle the truth.
And then there's a whole bunch of Social Security payments where there's no identifying information. Well, like, why is there no identifying information? Obviously, we want to make sure that people who deserve to receive Social Security do receive it, and that they receive it quickly and accurately. Also, another crazy thing. So, one of the things is, like, we are trying to sort of right-size the federal bureaucracy, just make sure that this, obviously, there needs to be a lot of people working for the federal government, but not as many as currently. So we're saying, if people can retire, with full benefits and everything, that would be good. They can retire, get their retirement payments, everything. And then we were told, this is actually, I think, a great anecdote, because we're told that the most number of people that could retire possibly in a month is 10,000. We're like, well, why is that? Well, because all the retirement paperwork is manual on paper. It's manually calculated, then written down on a piece of paper. Then it goes down a mine. And like, what do you mean a mine? Like, yeah.
He just discovered what Iron Mountain is, by the way. This is referring to Iron Mountain, which is, I believe, in Pennsylvania. And he just discovered what this is. And what it is, I had to look into this. The retirement paperwork can be filled out online. You as a person can fill this out online. But the Office of Personnel Management keeps these records out. And keep in mind, I've done a little bit more digging on this. One of the things they've been working on in recent years is to digitalize this process. They've been working on this. But what do they need in order to do this? You guessed it. They're going to need funds. They're going to need funds to keep this process more efficient. This is why they do say there's government red tape, because it takes so long to get that going.
Yeah, there's a limestone mine where we store all the retirement paperwork. And you look at a picture of this mine.
This is what it is, Miss Mandy. It's Iron Mountain.
Post some pictures afterwards. And this mine looks like something out of the 50s because it was started in 1955. So it looks like it's like a time warp. And then the speed, the limiting factor is the speed at which the mine...
And keep in mind, guys, Iron Mountain is used... It's not like this dark mine. For anyone unaware of what Iron Mountain is there is a ton of like documents and archives and everything under the sun in this mine. It's not like a little, put the lamp on and go into the mine. It's real dark and there's like these little tiny creaky desks. It's not like that. This is like an underground bunker, essentially. It's fascinating.
The shaft elevator can move, determines how many people can retire from the federal government. And the elevator breaks down sometimes, and then nobody can retire.
And one of the fact checks was this one right here, where he says that the elevator breaks down from time to time. There's been no assertion as such, but it's an elevator, so I'm sure it breaks at some point.
Doesn't that sound crazy? There's like 1,000 people that work on this. So I think if we take those people and say, like, you know what, instead of working in a mine shaft.
And the reason they have 1,000 people working on this is because there's been an immense backlog of retirement paperwork. I believe they said it's like 3 to 4 months to actually get approved. He might mention that here.
Carrying manila envelopes to boxes in a mine shaft. You could do practically anything else, and you would add to the goods and services of the United States in a more useful way.
And keep in mind this too, guys. I'm sorry to pause it so much, but I'll make it short. All of this occurred under Donald Trump's first administration, by the way. All of this spending occurred under Donald Trump's administration as well. His first administration.
So anyway, so I think, that's an example. Like at a high level, if you say, like, how do we increase prosperity, is we get people to shift from roles that are low to negative productivity to high productivity roles. And so you increase the total output of goods and services, which means that there's a higher standard of living available for everyone. That's the actual goal. Everyone's very quiet. Your
detractors, Mr. Musk.
I have to what?
Including a lot of Democrats.
I have detractors?
You do, sir.
I don't believe it.
Say that you're orchestrating a hostile takeover of government and doing it in a non-transparent way. What's your response to that criticism?
Well, first of all, you couldn't ask for a stronger mandate from the public. The public voted, we have a majority of the public voting for President Trump.
Majority of the public did not vote for Donald Trump. It was 49.9%, to be clear. And there was a 1.5% vote differential between him and Kamala Harris. That's a big issue, by the way, because what's happening right now is the Donald Trump administration is acting as if they got like an 80 to 90% majority of the vote. And what they don't understand is that there's still a considerable amount of the population. For example, I think it was I saw 54% on a recent poll that support birthright citizenship. They don't care about the electoralism, though. And that's kind of a bad thing, because Republicans right now are all getting behind Donald Trump with these radical policies, in my opinion. And guess what? When it comes to election time in the midterms or in 2028, they're going to lose their seat. So what I think is going to happen is in 2026, during the midterms, you're going to see Republicans tighten up. If Republicans do maintain the majority, which I suspect they won't, but if they do, they're no longer going to be falling in lockstep, because they're going to see just how close they were to losing.
We've won the House, we won the Senate. The people voted for major government reform.
Joseph Hernandez says, yesterday the government fraud claims have proved with receipts by Carolyn Levitt. I'm glad you mentioned that. We will be watching that shortly. Spoiler alert, there was no receipts that she actually showed. She showed what I assume, because, again, I don't see him anywhere, that it was, and you can see it looks just like the one that we saw earlier on Doge, where it shows like that ERP system look. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about.
Reform. There should be no doubt about that. That was on the campaign. The president spoke about that at every rally. The people voted for major government reform, and that's what the people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted.
And what I mean by receipt is like a receipt of them canceling that contract, not a detail of that contract. I would suspect if she wanted to bring actual receipts, she would bring a stack, because a government contract is not going to be thin. They would bring a stack of contracts of the actual contract. But they didn't. They brought a screenshot from Doge's Twitter. And you'll see that shortly.
Voted for. And a lot of times, people, they don't get what they voted for. But in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for. And that's what democracy is all about.
They voted for the economy. They voted for the economy. That was the number one issue amongst all voters, was the economy. Second was immigration. They're not getting the economy fixed right now. They're cleaning up the government contracts. We don't even know what they're cleaning up.
Mr. Musk, the White House says that you will identify and excuse yourself from any conflicts of interest that you may have. Does that mean that you are in effect policing yourself? What are the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that there's accountability?
Miss Mandy, you might like this analysis. Okay, notice what's happening here. There's the body language. Okay, Miss Mandy loves watching true crime stuff and everything. So if you're from Miss Mandy's chat, welcome in. Y'all are gonna like this one. Notice the body language here. I want you to watch. I'm going to rewind just a second.
That you are in effect policing yourself. What are the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that there's accountability and?
That is the body's way of saying that, yes, I'm policing myself. He's in agreement with her. It's that little subtle head shake. I've seen that before, where people start, when they're like, no, I didn't do it, and they kind of shake their head like that, or something along those lines. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Are you lying? No, I'm not lying. Yeah, well, I know the body language experts, okay? I'm not a body language expert, by the way, but thought that was interesting.
Transparency.
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the Doge handle on X and to the Doge website. So all of our...
And again, no, we don't have that.
Actions are maximally transparent. In fact, I don't think there's been I don't know of a case where an organization has been more transparent than the Doge organization. So, you know, and the kind of things we're doing are, I think, very, very simple and basic. They're not, you know, what I mentioned, for example.
Simple and basic? Simple and basic? So it's not an audit? You're just going through and doing Control F and looking. You're not actually diving into the contracts. You're not diving into the companies. You're just Control F, DEI. Oh, there's one, cancel. There's another one, cancel. There's another one, cancel. Well, that was easy.
Example about Treasury, just making sure that payments that go out, taxpayer money that goes out, is categorized correctly, that the payment is explained, that organizations on the do not pay list, which takes a lot to get there, that actually are not paid, which currently they are paid. These are not individual judgment decisions. These are about simply having sensible checks and balances in the system itself to ensure that taxpayer money is spent well. So it's got nothing to do with, like, say, a contract with some company of mine at all.
But if there is a conflict of interest when it comes to you yourself, for instance, you've received billions of dollars in federal contracts when it comes to the Pentagon, for instance, which the president, I know, has directed you to look into.
Yeah.
Are you policing yourself in that? Is there any sort of accountability check and balance in place that would provide any transparency for the American people?
Well, all of our actions are fully public. So if you see anything, you say, like...
Well, aloha, there's... Aloha Kitty said Elon sounds something as a kite. And I believe, and I don't want to accuse him of taking this, but I believe he does have ADD or something. He may take something for it, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think that's what it was, Teddy.
Wait a second. Hey, Elon, that seems like maybe that's, you know, there's a conflict there. I don't like people are going to be shy about saying that. They'll say it immediately. You know?
Including you yourself.
Yes. But transparency is what builds trust, not simply somebody asserting trust. So not somebody saying they're trustworthy, but transparency, so you can see everything that's going on. And you can see...
As he's saying this, by the way, there's not a single shred of evidence that he's holding up. He's like, trust me, bro. I've got this, bro.
Am I doing something that benefits one of my companies or not? It's totally obvious.
And if we thought that, we would not let him do that segment or look in that area if we thought there was a lack of transparency or a conflict of interest. And we watch that also. He's a big businessman. He's a successful guy. That's why we want him doing this. We don't want an unsuccessful guy doing this.
Successful. By the way, Tesla apparently almost went bottom up in 2009, I believe it was, because Elon Musk had to crawl, and like Elon's last chance at maintaining his company was to get an investor behind him, and that was in 2009. And SpaceX, I believe, did not turn a profit until 2020 after receiving billions of dollars. So successful.
Now, one thing also that Elon hasn't really mentioned are the groups of people that are getting some of these payments. They're ridiculous. And we're talking about billions of dollars that we've already found. We found fraud and abuse. I would say those two words as opposed to the third word that I usually use, but in this case, fraud and abuse. It's abusive because most of these things are virtually made up, or certainly money shouldn't be sent to them. And you know what I'm talking about. It's crazy. So, but we're talking about tens of billions of dollars that we've already found. And now a judge who's an activist judge wants to.
Here he goes again. He's going off about this activist judges. The activist judges. I'm telling you this. I'm telling you, I think that they are absolutely flooding the courts with these lawsuits. That's what I believe might be happening.
To try and stop us from doing this. Why? Why would they want to do that? I campaigned on this. I campaigned on the fact that I said government is corrupt. And it is very corrupt. It's very, very, it's also foolish. As an example, a man has a contract for 3 months and the contract ends, but they keep paying him for the next 20 years, you know, because nobody ends it.
Evidence. Please. I'm so tired of the trust me bros. I need evidence.
Contract. You get a lot of that. You have a contract that's a 3-month contract. Now, normally, if you're in a small, in all fairness, it's the size of this thing is so big. Yeah. But if you have a contract and you're in a regular business, you end the contract in 3 months, you know it's a consultant. Here's a contract for 3 months, but it goes on for 20 years. And the guy doesn't say that he got money for 20 years, you know? They don't say it. They just keep getting checks month after month. And you have various things like that, and even much worse than that, actually, much worse. And I guess you call that incompetence, maybe.
Yeah.
It could be corruption. It could be deals made on both sides, you know, where I guess the money he kicks. I think there's a lot of kickback here. I see a lot of kickback here.
There's a lot of kickbacks.
A tremendous kickback, because nobody could be so stupid to give out some of these contracts, so he has to get a kickback. So that's what I got elected for, that and borders and military, a lot of things, but this is a big part of it. And I hope that the court system is going to allow us to do what we have to do. We got elected to
Miss Mandy. Yeah, no, Miss Mandy, you you don't sound like that, no.
among other things, find all of this fraud, abuse, all of this horrible stuff going on. And we've already found billions of dollars, not like a little bit, billions, many billions of dollars. And when you get down to it, it's going to be probably close to $1 trillion. It could be close to $1 trillion that we're going to find. That will have quite an impact on the budget. And you'll go to a judge where they handpick a judge and he has certain leanings. I'm not knocking anybody.
Keep in mind that some of these judges that ruled against Donald Trump were George W. Bush appointees. And I believe there had been some Trump appointees in those judges as well. So those leanings are Republican-leaning judges that were making these rulings.
For that, but he has certain leanings, and he wants us to stop looking. How do you stop looking? I mean, we've already found it. We have a case in New York where a hotel has paid $59 million, $59 million because it's housing migrants, illegal migrants, all illegal, I believe.
And they were being paid twice the normal room rate at 100% occupancy.
Unbelievable.
So it's a racket.
Mr. Musk, can I ask a question?
Well, if I may sort of just going for the president's comments, at a high level, you say, well, what are the two ingredients that are really necessary in order to cut the budget deficit in half from 2 trillion to 1 trillion? And it's really two things: competence and caring. And if you add competence and caring, you'll cut the budget deficit in half.
Caring.
And I fully expect to be scrutinized.
Caring, guys. Sharing is caring, guys. Listen, if you do some caring, we'll get that deficit down, guys. That's some real good stuff.
And get a daily proctology exam, basically. Might as well just camp out there. So it's not like I think I can get away with something. I'll be scrutinized nonstop. But with support of the president, we can cut the budget deficit in half from 2 trillion to 1, and then with deregulation, because there's a lot of sort of regulations that don't ultimately serve the public good. We need to free the builders of America to build. And
what regulations? This is so vague. He's like, there's a lot of regulations. Somehow inherently more regulations is inherently a bad thing. No, you could argue that it could be because it kind of keeps people's hands tied behind their back. But not all regulations are inherently bad. Provide me some examples.
If we do that, that means I think we can get the economic growth to be maybe 3, 4%, maybe 5%. And that means if you can get $1 trillion of economic growth and you cut the budget deficit by $1 trillion, between now and next year, there is no inflation. There's no inflation in 26. And if the government is not borrowing as much, it means that interest costs decline. So everyone's the mortgage, their car payment, their credit card bills, anything, their student debt, the monthly payments drop. That's a fantastic scenario for the average American. I mean, imagine they're going down the grocery aisle and the prices from one year to the next are the same, and their mortgage, all their debt payments dropped. How great is that for the average American?
We had no idea we were going to find this much, and it's open. It's not like complicated. It's simple stuff.
Yeah, it's open. You should have known about this since 2014 when USAspending.gov was opened. It feels like an SNL skit. Yeah, he's just throwing. No, he's absolutely throwing numbers outside of his head. Welcome in, Fabius Orca. By the way, thank you for the follow.
It's like, a lot of work. Yeah. We can't believe it. A lot of work, a lot of smart people involved. You're talking about anyway, maybe 500 billion. It's crazy the kind of numbers you're talking about. You know, normally when you're looking at something, you'll find you're looking for 1 out of 100. Here, you're almost reversing it. You look for one that's good.
Yeah.
And you can look at the title and you say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And the public gets it. You know, the public gets it. You see.
Look at the title. The title of the contract. Look at the title. This is insane to me. He's like, hey, just look at the title. The title says DEI, bro.
In the polls, the public is saying, why are we paying all this money? This for years, this has gone on. Yeah, go ahead. Wait, go ahead.
Senator Rand Paul today said that Doge cuts will ultimately need a vote in Congress. Do you agree with that? Is that the plan?
I really don't know. I know this. We're finding tremendous fraud and tremendous abuse. If I need a vote of
He's not just finding, he's cutting the contracts. Stop this. Stop. Like, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to sugarcoat what they're doing. They're actually actively canceling contracts. We already saw this when we went and looked at Doge's Twitter.
Congress to find fraud and abuse. It's fine with me. I think we'll get the vote, although there'll be some people that wouldn't vote. And how could a judge want to hold us back from finding all of this fraud and finding all of this incompetence? Why would that happen? Why would...
I don't know, because, we have a thing called checks and balances where, the legislature, kind of holds that little thing that has a lot of that change. What is it called? The purse? Is that what it's called? Yeah, when they say, hey, here's $50 for you to spend on this here's another $100. Maybe that's why the judge is like, hey, well, we're going to stop this. Maybe, just maybe. That's just a thought.
Even Congress want to do that. Now, Congress, if we do need a vote, I think we get a very easy vote because we have a track record now. We've already found billions of dollars of abuse, incompetence, and corruption. A lot of corruption.
If a judge does block one of your policies, part of your agenda, will you abide by that ruling? Will you comply?
Well, I always abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it. But then
I always abide by the courts. Keep in mind, Donald Trump just recently got in trouble about funding freeze because he violated the temporary restraining order. Always abides by the courts.
What he's done is he slowed down the momentum, and it gives crooked people more time to cover up the books. If a person's crooked and they get caught, other people see that, and all of a sudden it becomes harder later on. So, yeah.
Keep in mind, Donald Trump was just found guilty of 34 felony counts of improper expenses by New York.
The answer is, I always abide by the courts, always abide by it, and we'll appeal. But appeals take a long time, and I would hope that a judge, if you go into a judge and you show him, here's a corrupt situation, we have a check to be sent, but we found it to be corrupt. Do you want us to send this corrupt check to a person, or do you want us not to give it and give it back to the taxpayer? I would hope a judge would say, don't send it, give it back to the taxpayer.
Yeah, if I can add to that, what we're finding is that a bunch of the fraud is not even going to Americans. So I think we can all agree that if there's going to be fraud, it should at least go to Americans. But a bunch of the fraud rings that are operating in the United States and taking advantage of the federal government, especially in the entitlements programs, are actually foreign fraud rings. They're operating in other countries and actually exporting money to other countries. We should stop that. And this is big numbers. We're talking about $100 to $200 billion a year. Serious money.
Mr. Musk, you said on X that an example of the fraud that you have cited was $50 million of condoms was sent to Gaza. But after fact-check this, apparently Gaza in Mozambique, and the program was to protect them against HIV. So can you correct this statement? It wasn't sent to Hamas, actually. It was sent to Mozambique, which makes sense why condoms was sent there.
Yeah.
And how can we...
This is Stephen Miller, guys. I think this is Stephen Miller over here. This is Trump's propaganda guy, all right? He's the one that goes out there and corrects the record.
Make sure that all the statements that you said were correct, so we can trust what you say.
Well, first of all, some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistake.
If you make a mistake, probably should try to make sure you are correct before you go out there, because guess what, guy? You're working right there along this guy right here. It's probably a good idea to probably be correct with what you say.
So
exactly,
I'm not sure we should be sending $50 million worth of condoms to anywhere, frankly. I'm not sure that's something Americans would be really excited about. And that is really an enormous number of condoms when you think about it. But if it went to Mozambique instead of Gaza, I'm like, okay, that's not as bad, but still, why are we doing that?
Mr. Musk, can you talk a little bit about how closely you're working with agency heads as you're directing these cuts? Do they have how much input do agency heads have when you're making these decisions?
Yeah, we work closely with agency heads, so there are
agency heads nominated by Donald Trump, by the way.
Checks in place, so it's not just us just going in and doing things willy-nilly. It's in partnership with the agency heads, and I check frequently with the president to make sure that this is what the president wants to have happen. So we talk almost every day, and I double check things to make sure, is this something, Mr. President, you want us to do this? Then we'll do it.
USAID has been one of your main targets. Are you concerned at all that some of the cuts or that shutting that agency altogether may lead to diseases or other bigger problems starting in other countries that then come to the United States?
Yeah, so that's an interesting example. So that's something where we work closely with the State Department and Secretary Rubio. And we have, for example, turn on funding for Ebola prevention and for HIV prevention.
I was muted. I did the wrong thing. I hit the mute button when I meant to unmute. Teddy Murray said, when was this meeting? It was a couple of days ago. This was a presser a couple of days ago.
Yes, correct. And we are moving fast, so we will make mistakes, but we'll also fix the mistakes very quickly. So,
do you see it as a worthy cause, USAID?
I think that there's some worthy things, but overall, if you say what is the bang for the buck, I would say it was not very good. And there was far too much of what USAID was doing was influencing elections in ways that I think were dubious.
They're just gonna say whatever they want to say. This is gonna be a major problem. We're only like barely 30 days into the presidency.
And do not stand light of day.
I just have to follow up to the Pentagon contracts. If you have received billions of dollars in contracts from the Pentagon, and the president's directing you to look.
Tessie Johnson asked, did you ever go over the kid roasting Trump? I know it's a minor nothing burger, but it was funny. Man, the thing is, Tessie, I'd rather leave the kid out of it, man. He's a kid. I'm not going to get the kid involved in this. He's just he's a kid. You know what I mean? I don't know. I feel kind of icky about that. I've seen some people doing that, and I'm like, I get it. His son's in the public spotlight, but it's just better to leave the kid. It was funny. I will say it was funny, right? But I don't know. That's why I ignored it.
Into the Department of Defense.
Yes, we definitely need to do and are going to do at the president's request.
Does that present a conflict of interest for you?
No, because you'd have to look at the individual contract and say, first of all, I'm not the one, filing the contract. It's people at SpaceX or someone who will be putting for the contract. And I'd like to say, if you see any contract where where it was awarded to SpaceX and it wasn't by far the best value for money for the taxpayer, let me know, because every one of them was.
The president said the other day that you might look at treasuries. Could you explain that a little bit? What kind of fraud, and that question goes to both of you, what kind of fraud are you expecting to see or do you see right now in U.S. treasuries?
Yeah, I think you mean the Treasury Department as opposed to Treasury bills. Or
you also referenced treasuries on Air Force One the other night.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, really the first order of business is to make sure we're actually collecting. Sorry for this. Although my son might enjoy this, but he's sticking his fingers in my ears and stuff. So it's a bit hard to hear sometimes. Hey, stop that. The stuff we're doing with the Treasury Department is so basic that you can't believe it doesn't exist already. So for example, like I mentioned, just making sure that when a payment goes out, it has to have a payment categorization code. It's like, what type of payment is this? You can't just leave the field blank. Currently, many payments, the field is left blank. And you have to describe what's the payment for, some basic rationalization. That also is.
Now, keep in mind, if this was an actual audit, what would happen is that these errors would be called out. For example, if a company was going through an auditing, if they're being audited on a certain, like, say, their payments that were going out, and this happened, right, where there's not a remittance on that payment that says, hey, this is for invoice, blah, 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 blah. It would just be, hey, this is an issue. We need to fix it. They wouldn't go through and say, hey, vendor that this company paid, we want you to give us our money back. Okay, it's essentially like that, right? Where Elon Musk is like, hey, we're not going to fund you anymore. We owe you 4 more payments, right? Because again, the way that these contracts work is there's usually like several different payments they make to these organizations. So imagine that you're a company and on the remittance part of your check, you don't put the invoice number on there. And then this guy comes in and goes, hey, you still owe this vendor 4 more checks, but you're not going to make any more payments. We're going to rip it up, the agreement that you made with this guy, and you're no longer going to provide services. Imagine the auditing company coming in and doing that. Imagine the auditing company coming in and doing that.
Blank. So this is why the Pentagon, when's the last time the Pentagon passed an audit? I mean, a decade ago, maybe? Ever? Really? And we want to, just in order to actually pass audits, you have to have financial information that allows you to trace the payments. And once.
This is the wild thing too, is because I live in this world that he's talking about, and he's like, yes, he's not wrong. You should be able to see and track these payments, but that doesn't give you carte blanche permission. That would be like one of the big 4 auditing firms coming into your company and ripping up the contract that you've made with your vendor. Like, it's crazy.
Well, the Treasury has to pause payments if it thinks the payment is going to a fraudulent organization. If a company or organization is on a do not pay list, we should not pay it. I'm sure you would agree. Like, if it's quite hard to get on that payment, the do not pay list, it means that this is someone that is just, it's like dead people, terrorists, known fraudsters, that kind of thing.
Again, evidence.
We should not pay them. But currently we do, which is crazy. We should stop that.
Many transactions. And by the way, hundreds, thousands of transactions like that. We have a big team. And for the sake of the country, I hope that the person that's in charge and the other people that report to me that are in charge are allowed to do the right thing, namely make sure everything's honest, legitimate, and competent. But we're looking at just, when you look at USAID, that's one. We're going to look at the military, we're going to look at education. They're much bigger areas. But the USAID is really corrupt. I'll tell you, it's corrupt. It's in.
All right, so I want to address someone in chat because this really, and that's fine. I appreciate you subscribing just to say that and unsubscribe. That's cool. I'm still going to address this in chat because this is something that's been really irritating me lately. Key Rogue said, the fact you focus on what an auditor does and not the fact that corruption is being rooted out tells me everything. This reminds me of when I sit there and go, hey, by the way, I don't think we should be deporting undocumented migrant workers. And they go, oh my God, you're in favor. You're in favor of slavery. Oh my God, you're in favor of it. No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said at all. In fact, what I said, and what if you would ask me, if you would just ask me and not assume what my stance is, then I would tell you, no, I think we should provide them a pathway to citizenship so that they could work. And while they're here, then we can give them a farmer's wage, whatever that may be. Farmers typically have different wage scales. In the same light here, Key Rogue, I don't want to have an auditor come in. Let me put it this way. I don't mind an audit of the federal government, but I want it done the right way by someone who doesn't have a vested interest in this particular area. I don't want an auditor to come in and go, hey, I don't have a CPA. Hey, I've never audited a company before. I've never led an audit. I don't have an MBA. I have a bachelor's of economics, but I don't have a bachelor's in accounting. I have none of those credentials. I have no experience other than having been audited, which is completely different. That is my issue I have with this. So when you sit there and you talk about, no problem, Miss Manny, thank you for coming in. When you talk about, oh, you care more about that. No, I care about corruption, absolutely. But I have a problem with the person who could be potentially committing some corruption is doing the auditing. That's like allowing the wolf to go into the hen house and count the hens. The wolf is going to say all 8 are there and leave. Meanwhile, a feather's sticking out of its mouth. The wolf's going to know none the better. And by the time you go in there, the chickens are gone. That was a great analogy. I came up with that.
Competent, and it's really corrupt. And I can't imagine a judge saying, well, it may be corrupt, but you don't have the right. You got elected to look over the country.
So that's pretty much the end of that. Yeah, I highly doubt they're because of SpaceX. No, because they don't have DEI programs, even though I'm sure they do. So the next video we've got is this press briefing. So I don't remember how long this one is. It was about 30 minutes long. We can watch this one. This also happened right afterwards. And so yeah, what I want to wrap up on this with the idea around Doge is I want to wrap it up in a bow. And I think I said it perfectly earlier. I have no problem going through seeing what is needing to be rooted out, which companies are probably not doing the best job, right? But I don't agree with the auditor going in and ripping up the contract. I don't think that Doge is actually really providing much of any kind of substance. And so for that reason, I think that Elon Musk should absolutely remove himself from this audit and allow an external, invested interest company to come in and audit the government. Have someone who specializes in governmental audits. Completely cool with that. I have an issue when it comes to Elon Musk doing that audit. All right, so let's go into there. Now we're going to cover this little bit. This is kind of a mixed bag of different things going on here. But I want to cover a little bit of this press briefing because I think it's very interesting to see how they're covering this. There was some rumors that at that press briefing we just saw, I believe that's the one, that the Associated Press was not allowed in. And the Associated Press was not allowed in because they refer to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. I don't care what you call it, Trump. I'm calling it the Gulf of Mexico. That's what I'm calling it. And I think the Gulf of Mexico is kind of going to stay that way. I think to call it Gulf of America is silly. And what we've seen is a lot of tech companies come after. They've gone and they've changed the name of the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, only in the U.S. because they don't want to have Section 230 issues. Everyone now knows Donald Trump's plays. They know that if you kiss the ring, you get benefits. And that's exactly what they're doing here. So now what we're going to watch is the press briefing. This was yesterday. Let's watch this.
Zelensky of Ukraine.
That was loud. All right. This also cuts in a little bit into the press briefing, so just bear with it. My interest is really more in the questions that are asked, but let's go ahead and get us a listen.
His truth is as follows. I just spoke to President Zelensky of Ukraine. The conversation went very well. He, like President Putin, wants to make peace. We discussed a variety of topics having to do with the war, but mostly the meeting that is being set up on Friday in Munich, where Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio will lead the delegation. I am hopeful that the results of that meeting will be positive. It is time to stop this ridiculous war where there has been massive and totally unnecessary death and destruction. God bless the people of Russia and Ukraine. I
like how she said Russia first. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being picky. I think it's interesting she said Russia first, not Ukraine.
Myself just spoke to the president about these calls, and he told me to tell all of you they were very good calls, they were very positive, and the administration is wholeheartedly committed to a peace deal to end once and for all the Russia-Ukraine war. More on that later. I'm sure you'll have more questions to ask. This week, the president has continued to deliver on his promises to the American people. According to new polling that was released at the beginning of this week by CBS News, an overwhelming 70% of Americans said that President Trump is following through on.
So this is the funny thing. Trump is doing this. So I'll have to pull up this poll. I should have had it up. It's saying 70% what he promised, and I'm assuming this is the election. Let me see if I can actually pull this up real quick, because I want to pull this up and show you guys. I should have had it pulled up. Let me get it pulled up. CBS poll. Trump doing. I think this is it right here. Getting it pulled up real quick for you guys. Yep, here it is. Okay. This is hilarious, y'all. This is hilarious. Let me go ahead and show you guys this. All right. So this is the poll she pulled up, and I'll show you. You can see in the background. 70%, 30%. What he promised in campaign, different from promise. There's numerous polls in here. Okay? Let's take a look at these polls. Why don't we? Describe Donald Trump as tough, energetic, focused, and effective. Trump's overall job rating, 53 and 47. Now, keep in mind, this is actually relatively low for his honeymoon period, but yeah. 59% approve and 41% disapprove of the deport immigrants illegally in the U.S. 64% approve sending U.S. troops to the Mexico border. Look at this one. This is where things get interesting. Large detention centers while determining who should be deported. 52% opposed that. This one's still 54 and 46 for the handling of Israel and Hamas. U.S. trying to take over Gaza would be, look at this. Look at this. This is where it gets crazy. He's talking about taking over Gaza. Look at this, y'all. Look at this. 13% said it'd be a good idea. 13%. And this one. This one's pretty wild. Look at this. Trump's focus on lowering prices is not enough. 66%, the same poll she's using. New U.S. tariffs on goods from China, and it says favor or oppose. Look at this. Canada, 38% favor. This is crazy. 44% favor for Mexico, 56% disapprove. Elon Musk and Doge, influence over government operations and spending should be a lot, some, not much, or none. Look at this. This is oh, y'all can't see it. This is insane. This is the thing, is like they try to cherry pick some of the polls where it shows favoritism. And they do have some favorable polling, but this is like, this is where it matters. Over government operations spending should be, and this is really interesting, they show the breakdown where it says influence over government operations and spending should be a lot, some, not much, and none. It shows it breakdown by party. And 49%, even look at this, Republicans usually, by the way, if you look at polling, you'll understand that usually the polling shows like 90% approval by Republicans on these, and it's not. And this is all the bylines and stuff. All right, so let's get back to this.
On what he pledged to do during his
Uh-oh. Audio's scuffed. All right, let's see if that's good.
Historic campaign. The poll also revealed that Americans see President Trump as a tough, energetic, focused, and effective leader fighting hard to improve their lives and our country. And yesterday, in particular, was a truly special day for the United States of America.
See, she used two graphics of the entire polling.
Thanks to the great leadership of President Trump and the strong and tough leadership of President Trump, Mark Fogel, an American teacher detained by Russia, was returned to American soil and met with the president here at the White House last night. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the rest of President Trump's incredible national security team helped to negotiate the exchange that secured Mark Fogel's release. This event shows a good faith effort from Russia, and it's a sign, as I just said, that we are moving in the right direction to end this.
Keep in mind, they had to give somebody who was convicted of fraud back to Russia, but it was announced in the early release part that it was just like a given exchange, right? Like they just gave the guy to the United States.
Brutal war. Malphine Fogel, Mark's 95-year-old mother, was understandably very worried that she would never see her son again after his arrest in 2021. Mrs. Fogel was actually slated to join President Trump on stage at the July 13th Butler, Pennsylvania rally to speak out for Mark, and then the infamous assassination attempt against President Trump took place. But that day, before the rally, President Trump promised Mark's mother that when he returned to the White House, he would bring her son home. God saved President Trump's life on that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, and now Mark Fogel is back home safely with his family as a result. God is good. The president also continues to bring back common sense to our government. This week, he signed an EO to end the procurement and forced use of paper straws. Taxpayer dollars were wasted on these non-functional and massively unpopular products.
What planet are we living on? I please, I want to rewind this. Did we just hear that, guys? Hold on. Look, I know you can't keep a straight face. Congratulations. Congratulations.
On that President Trump's life on that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, and now Mark Fogel is back home safely with his family as a result. God is good. The president also continues to bring back common sense to our government. This week, he signed an EO to end the procurement and forced use of paper straws. Taxpayer dollars were wasted on these non-functional and massively unpopular products for no other reason than it made radical activists feel good about themselves. And on trade, President Trump continues to take bold...
That's what matters, guys. The paper straws. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Action to protect America's critical steel and aluminum industries, much like he did in his first term. And the president signed...
Which, by the way, Joe Biden continued that same policy from Trump's administration with the steel tariffs, by the way. People don't know that. Joe Biden continued some of these policies.
Proclamations to close existing loopholes and exemptions to restore a true 25% tariff on steel and elevate the tariff on aluminum to 25% as well. This administration believes these tariffs will protect our national security and put American workers first. And in the
but go ahead.
Oval Office yesterday with Elon Musk, President Trump took further action to make our federal government more efficient and effective. He signed an EO implementing the Doge Workforce Optimization Initiative. Now agency heads will coordinate and consult with Doge to significantly shrink the size of the federal workforce and limit hiring to essential positions only. The unaccountable bureaucracy will finally be reined in. On another important matter this morning, Senate Republicans continued to confirm President Trump's exceptionally qualified nominees, most recently Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, who will be joining us later at the White House for her swearing-in ceremony. It's imperative that the remainder of the president's cabinet nominees are confirmed as quickly as possible. On another important matter this week, illegal alien criminals continue to be arrested and sent home as part of the ongoing mass deportation.
Sent home or sent to Guantanamo Bay, because we all know that they are sending undocumented immigrants to Guantanamo Bay, and we wonder if they are sending women and children. However, a judge also halted that.
effort of the Trump administration. Just this week, 2 planes with 190 Venezuelan illegal aliens arrived in the Venezuelan capital from Fort Bliss, Texas. Here are some of the criminal illegal aliens who were arrested in the country this past week. ICE Atlanta arrested a citizen of Nigeria who had been convicted of money laundering. ICE San Antonio arrested a citizen of Mexico who had been convicted of assault. ICE Denver arrested a citizen of Mexico who had been convicted of aggravated assault. And ICE Houston arrested a citizen of Mexico who had been convicted of aggravated assault. Now, before I take questions.
Now, by the way, guys, this was happening under the Biden administration. Anybody that was deemed like this was already going after, by the way. But that's not the crux of the issue. They presented, like, again, 3 or 4 people. Sorry about that. All right, we're back.
I would like to address an extremely dishonest narrative that we've seen emerging over the past few days. Many outlets in this room have been fear-mongering the American people into believing there is a constitutional crisis taking place here at the White House.
Because there is. When you're sitting there undermining the judicial branch, that is the constitutional crisis.
I've been hearing those words a lot lately. But in fact, the real constitutional crisis is taking place within our judicial branch, where district court judges in liberal districts across the country are abusing their power to unilaterally block President Trump's basic executive authority.
Unilaterally block? That is their right to do. Put a TRO in place. And guess what? It is people who have cause to bring forth a suit who then asks for that TRO to be put in place. And keep in mind, there are Republican judges that are out, or Republican appointed judges that are out there that are doing these motions. They're not liberal. There's Republicans as well. George Bush nominated judges, to be exact.
We believe these judges are acting as judicial activists rather than honest arbiters of the law. And they have issued at least 12 injunctions against this administration in the past 14 days, often without citing any evidence or grounds for their lawsuits. This is part of a larger concerted effort by Democrat activists and nothing more than the continuation of the weaponization of justice against President Trump. Quick newsflash to these liberal judges who are supporting their obstructionist efforts: 77 million Americans voted to elect this president. And each injunction is an abuse of the rule of law and an attempt to thwart the will of the people. As the president...
I guess what she's advocating for is that because 76 million people voted for Donald Trump, I guess that he's able to do whatever, he wants to do.
Clearly stated in the Oval Office yesterday, we will comply with the law in the courts, but we will also continue to seek every legal remedy to ultimately overturn these radical injunctions and ensure President Trump...
Keep in mind, they did not unfreeze the funds when they were told to unfreeze the funds. They defied that order.
Policies can be enacted. So here in our new media seat today, we have Chris Pavlovsky, an entrepreneur who has a strong passion for protecting freedom of speech. Chris started the video sharing platform Rumble in 2013 with a mission of protecting a free and open internet.
Me and Miss Mandy were talking about this. Miss Mandy, here you go.
From censorship by big tech and governments around the globe. The platform has always...
Teddy said, who did you vote for, dog? By the way, this is a good point for me to make a stop. Guys, if you're watching this, please subscribe to this live stream. Like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. We are aiming for 1,000 subscribers, guys, okay? Let's get to that amount, okay? If you're on Twitch, Twitter, Kick, please follow me, okay? We're trying to get this stream making a little bit more. Who did you vote for? I voted for Kamala Harris. I voted for Romney in 12, Trump in 16, Cruz in 18, Trump in 20. Did not vote in 22, and I voted for Kamala Harris and Colin Allred. I saw the light, so to speak. So I'm ashamed that I voted for Donald Trump in 16 and 20 because it has led to this. But I can't go back in time.
Always been a place for independent creators to share their authentic opinions, and they have always included President Trump, in contrast to the way he was censored by other platforms in years past. Since its founding, Rumble has grown exponentially, recently marking 67 million monthly active users. It's a lot of users. If you're watching right now and interested in sitting in this seat, you can apply, whitehouse.gov/new-media. With that, I will take your questions. And Chris, why don't you kick us off on this very busy news day?
Carolyn, thank you very much to you and President Trump. It's an honor to be sitting here in the new media seat for the White House press briefing and to be able to demonstrate why freedom of expression is so important. Rumble was the victim of censorship at the hands of multiple foreign governments. It's clear there are still many countries who oppose free speech and even target American companies. Can you describe what the administration will do to protect U.S. interests and values worldwide?
Sure. Well, thanks for the very important question. And I think that free speech and ending censorship, both here at home and also abroad, is an important part of President Trump's agenda. I think, first, President Trump has led by example on this front as the leader.
And he wants to do this by invoking Section 230. He wants to remove Section 230.
of the free world, the president of the United States, with his show of access and transparency on a daily basis. The president takes questions from all of you almost every single day and really reveals what he's thinking and feeling, and I think that serves as a great example to the rest of the world. As for tangible actions that the president has signed, he did sign an executive order, I believe on day one, certainly within the first week of this administration, to restore free speech and stop government-sponsored censorship here at home. And the EO made it very clear that federal employees are not allowed to engage in any activity that would infringe upon the American people's right of free expression. So I think the president has led quite strongly on this.
And we're about to get into that because the Associated Press was not allowed in at the press briefing. So all about that censorship, right? They're big on that, big on censorship. Okay.
I would just add, this is part of the reason we have a new media seat, to invite new voices into this room. Again, we're going to need to expand this room because so many people are interested, and we're very excited about that. It's a privilege to cover this White House, but we want all voices to be heard. So thanks for being us with here, Chris, and I hope you enjoy the briefing. Sure. Jordan.
Thanks, Caroline. Data out this morning showed that consumer prices were up across a variety of goods, and just before that report, though, President Trump called for lower interest rates. The Fed said it's holding rates steady to try and tamp down further inflation. So how would lowering rates help keep inflation in check for the American people?
Sure. Well, first of all, on the inflation point, we did receive those numbers, and they were worse than expected, which tells us that the Biden administration indeed left us with a mess to deal with. It's far worse than I think anybody anticipated, because unfortunately the previous administration was not transparent in where the economy truly was. We
knew where the economy was. It was at 2.5%. You guys came in and messed it up.
People at this very podium told the American people that inflation was transitory and that it would go away. That was not the case. And now the last report of the Biden administration, as revealed today, shows that inflation is still about 4.5% higher over the past 3 months. This is an indictment on the Biden administration's
4.5% up over the past 3 months. 4.5% over the past 3 months. I like how she used that, because what she doesn't understand is that it went up to 3%, went from 2.5 to 3%. In January. So
management of the inflation crisis and their lack of transparency in addressing it. As for tackling inflation and interest rates, the president has made his position on this very clear. He wants interest rates to be lower. He wants inflation to be lower. And he believes that the whole of government economic approach that this administration...
You can't get rates low. Lower interest rates it's going to lead to higher inflation.
Is taking will result in lower inflation. I've said that from this podium many times. The president had record low interest rates and inflation rates in his first term. He believes that the economy can handle it and withstand it. And we're doing a lot to
lower rates try to incentivize spending because the economy has stalled. But when it incentivizes spending, it can also lead to inflation.
To tackle the inflation effort on this front. It's a whole of government economic approach, and I've talked about what we're doing to tackle inflation quite a few times from this podium.
Tariffs, that's going to come before Prime Minister Modi's visit tomorrow.
So, Laura, welcome in, by the way. During Trump's presidency, it was 1.4. It was 1.4 at the lowest in like 2020. And that was large part due to COVID-19. Throughout the majority of his presidency, it was still significantly lower than Joe Biden's. But what ended up happening is due to Donald Trump's stimulus packages, the OPEC deal, and a numerous stream of other things, it ended up increasing our inflation month over month, or year over year to 9.1% at its peak in 2022. It was only after the Inflation Reduction Act was put in place that it ended up decreasing. But again, Joe Biden had a little bit of a hand in that because Donald Trump implemented the stimulus package in December of 2020. And then Joe Biden came in January and passed another stimulus package. So to be clear, I'm not completely in favor of the fact that Joe Biden passed a wholly unnecessary stimulus package, and also the fact that Donald Trump did one in December when that was wholly unnecessary as well. I was fine with one stimulus package. We didn't need 3. So we overheated our economy, plain and simple. So
I do believe it will come before the Prime Minister's visit tomorrow, and I will let the President discuss the details on the reciprocal tariff front. But this is something he believes strongly in, and it's very simple logic as to why the President wants to impose reciprocal tariffs. It's the golden rule, which we all learned when we were growing up in school. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And far too many nations around this world have been ripping off the United States of America for far too long, and that's why the President believes this will be a great policy that will benefit American workers and improve our national security. JJ.
On Doge and the fraud claims, Elon Musk in the Oval yesterday gave us some information on that. We're just wondering if there's some proof, evidence. Is the White House willing to share evidence of those fraud claims, or can Elon Musk come to the...
For anyone who's waiting for those evidence, guys, let's keep an eye. We'll go look at this.
Briefing room and share material evidence of what he's talking about?
Sure, I would love for Elon Musk to come to the briefing room. That's why we had him go to the Oval Office yesterday, where I think he provided great answers. He was speaking in layman's terms, speaking common sense to all of you in the media, but also to Americans at home. But I would say especially to all of you in the media, because I think it's a real fallacy that there's this alleged lack of transparency when it comes to Doge.
Because there is. There is a lack of transparency.
President Trump and Elon Musk have been incredibly transparent on what Doge is doing. There is an X account with the Doge handle. They are tweeting out what they are doing on a
We looked at that earlier. There's not much of anything, and let's see
daily
what she pulls
basis.
up.
They have a website where they are posting the receipts of the contracts that they are
At that time that she was mentioning this, it was down.
reviewing, and the payments that they have stopped from going out the door. The secretaries of our departments have stopped from going out the door. And I would also say that before it was Elon Musk making our government efficient and accountable, it was some unnamed bureaucrat that none of you knew. Elon Musk is the richest.
You see how they did that? Unnamed bureaucrat that you never knew? Oh, okay, guys. Hey, look, it's all better. We now know who the unelected bureaucrat is. See? So it's all better. We now know who the unelected bureaucrat is.
Man in the world. He's also now one of the most highly scrutinized men in the world alongside President Trump because of what he's doing and the access that he is allowing. So there's great transparency. As for the actual receipts, we are happy to provide them, and I actually brought some today because all of
All right, so y'all see this? Doesn't this right here? Let's see if I can. I don't want to rewind it too much. Now let's go take a look at Doge. I'm gonna have to go back to one of these other ones. Let's go take a look at Doge here. Let's see. I'm sure one of these is Doge. Oh, right here. All right. Don't those look similar? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Look at this. How many blue bars we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's probably some cutoff here. And all this is, guys, is just saying that this contract was terminated. Now I don't know what's up here, to be fair, but I see 3-3. This it right here, maybe? I see something over here. Might be that. So there you go. She's her receipts are from Doge, and they're not even actual like information. Y'all can look on here. There's nothing on here that mentions anything about like what the contract is for, who it's for, what they do. None of that. That's her receipt.
you know I love to bring the receipts. We have contracts upon contracts that we can send and provide this information to you. Let me be very clear. We are not trying to hide anything. We have been incredibly transparent, and we will continue to be. These are screenshots of contracts that Doge found across our government. This is a DEI contract, $36,000 for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. That is against the...
A DEI contract. Boy, that tells me everything. My goodness.
President's policies and his America First agenda. This is a $3.4 million contract, a Council for Inclusive Innovation at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Department of Commerce, another DEI contract that Doge identified.
Another DEI contract. You see what they're doing?
I can continue to go through these. Oh, I love this one. $57,000 for climate change in Sri Lanka. What is this doing to continue the interests of the American people? Absolutely nothing. I
don't know. Why don't you provide us with those contracts? Not this, right?
Are the line items across
here. I don't want this little bottom part. I don't even know what this is. I feel like DEI has been a cancerous country. I want the best heart surgeon. I don't care what. But the problem is, Laura, listen, I sympathize with you. I understand that, Trump ran on DEI, but this is not the way to handle it. Okay. This doesn't tell me nothing. This is literally like a bull in a china shop, and not in a good way, okay? America is the China in the china shop right now. The world is the China in the china shop right now. Okay, this is not the way to go about it. And to me, again, you want to have an issue with it, that's cool. I get it. Y'all want a merit-based system, but the problem is this is not even the way it's being done in a merit-based system. So, again, I agree with you, and I think more times than not, I don't want to get into the DEI argument and things like that, but I just think this is this is getting rid of DEI to a whole nother level. It's like if it says DEI, if it has diversity, equity, inclusion, at all in the name of the contract, they're like, get it out of here, get it out of here. We don't even know what's in the contract though.
the federal government that Doge is identifying daily. They're moving very fast. There's a lot of paper that we can show you, but we're happy to do.
Laura said, I just feel, honey, like when you're doing an audit and you're trying to get the corruption out, it ain't going to look pretty. No, I get that it's not going to look pretty. I get that. Audits reveal very dark things. things, right? It'll make you feel lesser than because your processes aren't clean, your contracts don't look great. But the problem is that when these contracts get canceled by the auditor, that's a problem. I work in financial services. And I can tell you when someone does an audit, the auditor themselves don't cancel any future contracts. They don't cancel leases, for example, right? They come in and say, hey, these processes are inefficient. Here's our findings, so on and so forth. Or if they're going in and they're actually, doing a end of year audit or whatever that's required because they're a public company, those are usually disclosed in the company's financial statements, right? And it'll say that. So that's what I'm saying is I just think this is being handled in the worst kind of way. I'm not against, right? I'm not against them doing an audit of the company. I'm not against, or audit of the government. I'm not against that. They could do it. But the way they're handling this is not the best way to handle this. This would be like equivalent of me getting a vendor to come into my company and be like, hey, vendor, can you audit our books? The CEO of that other vendor, by the way. And that's kind of vague, but that's what I'm trying to say is, bring it, like, look, I don't know if Deloitte or, PricewaterhouseCoopers or any of those other big fours, maybe they have a way to do it. But anyways, you get what I'm saying, yeah.
Do it. This administration has been more than transparent about what Doge is doing. And here's one of their tweets that they posted about the mine. I believe this is in Pennsylvania, where the federal employee retirement.
She doesn't even know about Iron Mountain. Oh, my goodness.
System is being processed. Did anybody know this was even happening in our country before Elon Musk talked about it in the Oval Office yesterday?
Yes. It's called Iron Mountain. It's been around since the 50s. Anybody who knows anything about the government knows that Iron Mountain exists. It's like one of the world's largest archives or whatever.
Yesterday, a lot of Americans didn't. So we are providing transparency and accessibility on a daily basis when it comes to Doge. And I also have a Doge daily report, if anybody would like it, on all of the things that they are identifying and finding. We're happy to provide this information to you. We're talking about it every single day.
Are all those things you just mentioned fraud, or are they waste, or are they just contrary to the president's policies?
I would argue that all of these things are fraudulent, they are wasteful, and they are an abuse of the American tax.
They're all three. They're all three, guys. They're fraudulent. Oh, my God. Ismail said all these funds have already been agreed upon and voted for by both Republicans and Democrats. Congress holds the power of the purse, and what Elon is doing is legal. Yeah, no, and this is one of the reasons why it's being challenged in the courts massively. And the problem is they're canceling contracts. My concern is that whether or not it's going to be able to be undone or not. They're canceling contracts. That's some pretty scary stuff. Because guess what? When they canceled it, can they undo that cancellation? Laura, I knew it was there, but I didn't know that about the work they were doing there. Yeah, look, I get it. Some people don't know about it. That's cool. The thing about Iron Mountain is again, it's really just like a data depository, and they've been working. This is the thing too, is a lot of people have just discovered this, and they think that there's a bunch of little people in this like mine that, are sitting behind with a little gas lantern, like typing away on typewriters. No, it's a very sophisticated bunker essentially. And what they've been working on is trying to improve their processes. They haven't just been sitting there, but it takes money from Congress to improve those processes. So maybe it'll finally get done.
Taxpayers' dollar. This is not what the government should be spending money on. It's contrary to the president's priorities and agenda. And again, we can continue to provide you the receipts for all of the fraud, waste, and abuse. And if anybody in here wants to argue that the federal government is not fraudulent in some capacity, be my guest, because I think the American people watching at home would beg to differ. Mary.
Hey, more on the judges. Does the White House believe the courts have the authority to issue these nationwide injunctions?
We believe that the injunctions that have been issued by these judges have no basis in the law and have no grounds. And we will, again, as the president.
No basis. They're just going out, guys. These judges. The problem I have with this is the rhetoric that is being spoken from this podium. And I've heard already, because I get on TikTok live every morning and talk with a whole bunch of people. It's very fun. So follow me on TikTok if you're not following me. And the people like MAGA are eating this up. They're like, wow, these judges are going out there and they're just saying no, stamping. And these liberal judges, they were all nominated on Joe Biden. Some of these were Republican appointed judges, and they do have legal basis. For example, birthright citizenship. There is precedent upon precedent upon precedent about birthright citizenship.
The president said very clearly yesterday, comply with these orders, but it is the administration's position that we will also ultimately be vindicated. And the president's executive actions that he took were completely within the law. They were constitutional, and we look forward to the day where he can continue to implement his agenda. And I would just add, it's our view that this is the continuation of the weaponization of justice that we have seen against President Trump. He fought it for 2 years on the
Weaponization of justice. We'll get to the weaponization of justice here, okay?
campaign trail. It won't stop him now. Brian.
Yes. I want to go back to Doge just for a second. Earlier, the subcommittee headed by Chairman Marjorie Greene, her and her staff discovered $2.7 trillion in improper payments to Medicare, Medicaid, overseas, to people who should not have gotten it. Some of this room might have missed that press conference. Can you elaborate on what the president is thinking at this point?
Well, again, that's another example. There's a very long list of the fraud, waste, and abuse that Doge is identifying on a daily basis. Elon Musk also talked about yesterday about Social Security payments that are going out the door for people who are no longer with us.
Remember, guys, they said they weren't going to come after your Social Security, your Medicare, your Medicaid, and they are. Imagine if you were on the receiving end of losing that payment, which they've already froze federal funds. Now, I don't know. I don't believe it applies to Social Security, but yeah.
Unfortunately, I would say that is certainly fraud. There's also a lot of contracts they've identified that, just as a hypothetical example, are...
Well, and to what Ismail said, they're trying to demolish the Constitution, which says that there are checks and balances to uphold the law that can and should challenge the executive. The problem with this, Ismail, is the fact that not the problem. What they're looking at is that they have control over the legislative, and the executive. They don't have full control over the judicial because these judges are different appointments, right? You have some that are Republican, some that are not. And so when you look at the fact that the Supreme Court, even the Supreme Court, though, because Kavanaugh has kind of ruled in different ways, and so has Barrett. He's only really got two solid Supreme Court justices. I think it's Gorsuch and Thomas. Those two are pretty solidly Trump, but these other ones kind of flip-flop in a very consistent manner, which is good for us as American people. But they don't have full control. So it does feel like they want to try to have some control over the judicial.
$1 million, but only 500,000 went out the door. So where's the rest of that cash? And so that's the thing.
Brandon said, what's the real agenda that the White House has while distracting America with this? Well, keep in mind, we haven't talked about the immigration stuff in a while. My worry is this all a smokescreen for what's going on with deportations? I've heard some pretty crazy stuff about it, like U.S. citizens being arrested and even potentially sent to Guantanamo Bay. You're not seeing the messages and you're on YouTube? You should be able to see them. So there was one from Brandon Paris, but I'm not sure why it's not up there. No, Liberty Twitcher. It's so Teddy Murray. I will let you know. We have multiple chats. We're streaming on multiple platforms. We're on Twitch, Kick, Twitter, and YouTube. So I have a chat on my right-hand side. You can't really see it, but it's up over here on the left-hand side. And anyways, so that's who I'm responding to. How can they deport people who aren't here legally because they're unable to provide some kind of documentation because they don't have they weren't able to get a birth certificate or whatever it may be. There's various things. Yeah, it might be on multiple platforms. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next one.
Those are the things that Doge is working on every single day. And I would just remind everybody in this room, this is what President Trump campaigned on doing. He's delivering on a promise that 77 million people elected him to do. James.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Two foreign policy questions, if I may.
Sure.
First, a statement that was released after this morning's phone calls identified Mr. Witkoff as the special envoy who will be part of the delegation that undertakes to resolve the Russia-Ukraine war. I had thought that individual was General Kellogg, and so can you clear that up?
Sure, I'd be happy to. As you mentioned, the president in his truth following our national security advisor here at the White House, Michael Watts, and Steve Witkoff heading the negotiations to this point. And
Comments in his Super Bowl interview with our colleague Brett Baer to the effect that he wants to do a deal with Iran. However, that interview appeared after the Supreme Leader of...
The one thing I'll say about this is that, again, Donald Trump being obsessed with the entire world, but not the United States and the inflation that we're going through.
Iran, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had already ruled out any additional negotiations with the United States. So kind of a two-part question. A, what gives the president any confidence that Iran will come to the table?
And B, more fundamentally, why is the president interested in doing a deal with Iran instead of doing everything he can, perhaps short of U.S. military intervention, to try and hasten the end of what many of his own supporters regard as an evil regime?
Well, the president has made it very clear that he will never allow Iran to have nuclear capabilities. That is a red line that he has drawn, and he will not allow that to happen. But you asked why President Trump wants to make a deal. I would remind you, he's the master of the art of the deal. He is America's deal maker in chief. He leads from a position of securing peace through strength. And I think time and time again already, in just 4 weeks, we have seen.
I got you, Teddy Murray. Yeah, no, I've got it over here on my other camera, but it's just I don't have it popped up here. I probably should. Matter of fact, I could probably do that actually real quick. We have a chat box. I'll mess with it later. We'll fix it for tomorrow's stream.
The president being able to negotiate successful deals with our partners, our adversaries all around this world. The release of Mark Fogel just last night is something that I think speaks to the president's deal-making ability. This is something that the Biden administration allegedly tried.
Yeah, deal-maker in chief. And we'll get to we're gonna very quickly wrap this up after this interview. You'll see.
To do for 3.5 years. I think
you'll see where they praise Donald Trump and say that God sent Trump for us.
Should go back and ask some of those Biden administration officials what they even tried to do and why weren't they successful, because for 3.5 years Mark Fogel sat in a Russian prison and it took President Trump 3 weeks to get him back on American soil. There's nobody better at making deals than Donald Trump.
I wonder why he got him back in 3 weeks. Could it be that Trump is favored by Putin?
Phil Wegman.
Thank you. 2 foreign policy questions. Ukrainian President Zelensky has said after the war that he wants NATO membership or nuclear weapons. We heard Defense Secretary Hegseth say that NATO membership was unrealistic. What's the president's view on the other option, on a nuclear Ukraine?
I have not talked to President Trump about Ukraine's NATO membership or their nuclear capabilities. I would leave it to him to discuss. But I will tell you again that Secretary Rubio and also the Vice President, J.D. Vance, will be meeting directly with President Zelensky in Munich on Friday, and I'm sure they will provide a readout of that conversation and that discussion.
And the second question, given that this administration has called on Europe to take more responsibility for their own defense, I'm wondering, will the EU or any other European nation other than Ukraine be involved in these peace talks?
I don't have any European nations who are involved currently to read out for you. Certainly, the president has employed a very strong team or deployed a very strong team to continue these negotiations. And the fact that he was on the phone with both President Putin and President Zelensky today shows that he's very much involved in this effort as well.
And then just a follow-up, I guess. Sure. Should we expect the president to negotiate in person with Zelensky and Putin?
I don't have anything to read out on that for you today. Maggie, good to see you.
She got nothing. She's got nothing for the Russia, Ukraine or any of that. She's like, that's my job, but I don't know.
Thanks for taking the question. You talked about the transparency with Doge and Elon Musk's press availability yesterday. There is a conflict of interest law in place that says that people who have personal interests can't interact with government entities that could touch on those. Has President Trump signed a waiver for Elon Musk? Does such a thing exist? If it does, will you guys release it in the interest of transparency that he's committed to?
I have not seen the law that you are referring to. What I can tell you is that Elon Musk, as I've confirmed before, is a special government employee. He is filing the proper financial disclosure, and he is complying with all applicable.
So then release it. Like, if he's signing all these things, release it then. Let's have transparency, right?
Federal laws. As you also heard Elon address this directly yesterday in the alleged conflict of interest. And he said everything he's doing is very public. And if you all perceive a conflict of interest, you're welcome to bring that up. And as the president said, if he feels like Elon is engaging in something that's a conflict of interest, he will tell Elon not to do that. And Elon also said yesterday that before he moves forward with anything, he consults with the president of the United States. So we're very confident with the ethics and the guardrails that have been put in place here. Caitlin.
Thanks, Caroline. I have a few things for you, but on the commitment by President Trump, he said that he and President Putin agreed to visit each other's respective nations. Are there any preconditions that President Trump has that President Putin must do before he goes and meets with him, withdrawing some forces, withdrawing all forces, anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but I was just talking with the president and our national security team.
I gotta start wrapping things up, but I'm gonna start moving it a little faster. I want to get to the one about the Associated Press. Yeah, there's no transparency
I wasn't made aware of any
whatsoever.
conditions, but if they exist, I'm happy to provide those.
And on the president himself, he styles himself as this master negotiator. He is now deploying these negotiations, saying that they start immediately. We did hear from the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, though, today saying that negotiations have started.
Again, he's directly involved in these negotiations as well, and I'm sure
made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the.
He'll give you an answer. I just don't want.
This is the one I want to address. This is the one I want to address because it leads into our next story, and that's where we're going to kind of like wrap up this here.
Ahead of him on it.
And final thing for you, which White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night? Well,
there it is, the AP reporter that was barred.
First of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press.
It's a privilege to cover this White House, guys. It's not. It's there. There's a First Amendment, but it's a privilege, guys. It's a privilege.
Secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office. And you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
But isn't it retaliatory?
So
nature is the argument, because the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the...
It is not a fact. It is not a fact. It's not been changed in any law. It's been put in place by an executive order. And then some of these companies have decided to do so.
Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is. The Secretary of Interior has made that the official designation in the geographical identification name server. And Apple has recognized that. Google has recognized that. Pretty much every other outlet in this room has recognized that body of water as the Gulf of America.
This is so petty. This is so petty, y'all. Because the Associated Press did not call it the Gulf of America, they barred them from that presidential briefing.
And it's very important to this administration that we get that right, not just for people here at home, but also for the rest of the world. Sure.
Thank you, Caroline. The prisoner exchange with Russia coming at this...
All right, so let's go to the next story because I got to start wrapping things up here. Here it is here. A letter from the AP executive editor, Julie Pace, to White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, signals a likely legal challenge now that the Trump admin has twice singled out the AP for punishment over its use of Gulf of Mexico. And a judge ruled in favor of so I want to mention this. This rings very similarly to what happened with Jim Acosta. So people forget what happened with Jim Acosta. Jim Acosta was someone who had press briefing passes and all that. And this happened under Donald Trump's first administration. And they caved to Jim Acosta and gave him his pass back. But what's important here is I won't read this entire article. Should have. But I'm not going to because of time. Basically, they ruled on the First and Fifth Amendment grounds. So it's important to understand is that the Fifth Amendment is because if they've been there for a long time, then they have a right to due process, meaning they are the press. They are handled with a certain sensitive nature. And also because they are the press, there could be potential violations of the First Amendment. And because of that violation of the First Amendment, we're back where we are now. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Now let's move on to the weaponization of the DOJ. Remember, the Donald Trump administration didn't like when this happened, right? They were just so upset about it. They didn't like it. And now look at what's happening, guys.
I was in the West Wing swearing in Tulsi Gabbard.
I'm not going to play the audio. The Pam Bondi announced the DOJ has filed charges against the state of New York, Kathy Hochul, Letitia James, and Mark Schroeder. And we still have Kash Patel to come in here. Everything's great, guys. And then we also had, this is kind of the fun bit of the clip. This is where we start bringing in some of the loose bits here. Trump said, like on tractors that can handle anything from hurricanes to lightning to anything, they use magnets, a new theory, magnets. They're going to lift the planes up and it doesn't work. What? Mind you guys, Trump is 78 years old. Okay? If Joe Biden said anything like this, they would be very upset. And in this case, we saw the press secretary, or the new Trump education secretary, saying that they should take a look at defunding public schools that teach Black history. I'm flying through these, but just bear with me because I got to get off. CNN, the Senate confirmed RFK Jr. and we saw RFK Jr. right after this incident mention, "God sent me President Trump. He's kept every promise he's made to me. I'm so grateful to you, Mr. President. A lot of people told me that I couldn't trust President Trump." And keep in mind, RFK Jr. was not very favorable to Donald Trump. And I'm going to play this one for our buddy Tron.
I don't know anything about almost...
Ooh, that's hot. All right, let's turn that down.
everything. I don't know how helicopters work. I don't know what's keeping the stars apart, but I do know a lot about one thing. In fact, I spent the last 4 years writing a book about it. The book is called Everything is Tuberculosis, and the thing I know about is tuberculosis, our deadliest infectious disease. And so I know what happens when you interrupt a course of TB treatment. Now, TB is a curable bacterial infection, but it's not easy to cure. Like, maybe you've had a case of strep throat that takes like a 7-day course of antibiotics to cure. TB takes like 4, maybe 6 months, maybe longer. And if, say, your 4 or 6 or more months of antibiotics are interrupted because, I don't know, the U.S. government puts a freeze on all foreign aid and claims that life-saving medicine is still moving, but it isn't moving. When that happens, and it's currently happening in countless cases, you have a much greater chance of developing drug-resistant tuberculosis. So say your medication is paused for 2 weeks or a month. You go back, you treat the infection with the exact same antibiotics that were working before, and suddenly they don't work anymore because the infection had a chance to evolve resistance. Now, this is a catastrophe on a personal level because it means TB is harder or even impossible to cure. It's also a catastrophe on a societal level because it means there's more drug-resistant TB floating around, and when left untreated, the average case of drug-resistant TB will infect between 10 and 15 people per year. So that's what happens when stop work orders leave drugs sitting in a warehouse rotting rather than getting to the patients that need them. Millions more people get tuberculosis. The tuberculosis they get is harder to treat.
So yeah, guys, this is what we can expect under a RFK Jr. Head Health of Human Services, least qualified probably for sure. Man has no experience in this whatsoever, and anybody who comes up to me and says that, what about Joe Biden's Health and Human Services Secretary? Yeah, he was probably underqualified as well. Rachel Levine, she was more qualified than RFK Jr., but everybody got upset because of the fact that Rachel Levine was trans. So spare me. It's hilarious. Anyways, guys, look, I've got to get off. I appreciate every single one of you guys, all 200 of you guys. Seriously, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Listen, if you have not already followed me, we will be doing a live stream tomorrow, and then we'll pick back up on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every single week at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Super easy to remember. I am on Twitch, Twitter, Kick, you name it. I'm also on TikTok. I'm on all those platforms. So please follow me on those. Please, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, guys. We're almost there. We're almost there. Okay, we're at like 350, but we're almost there. So please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I thank you, every single one of you guys. If you're on Twitter, hit the follow button. If you're on Twitch, hit that follow button. And I appreciate you guys. I'll see you tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time.